Hey guys, CJ here. Um, just another episode of me talking about, the Bible and stuff and what to learn from it. So let's just get into it. I'm going to be talking about Genesis 3 and Genesis 4. So let's start with Genesis 3. Let's get into it. So, one of the first things I feel like we should mention is that it says so right here in Genesis chapter 3, verse 1. The serpent was the most cunning of all the animals that the Lord God had made. This shows us, now we obviously know the serpent is the devil, like Lucifer, Satan, but not a lot of people realize this, but even though the devil is evil, he's also sadly, unfortunately, smart. So he knows how to get at us. And the thing about it is that he's gonna be coming at us in ways that not he's not gonna be coming at us in like a freaky form and stuff. No, he's gonna come at us ways that seem pleasing to us, that seem tempting to us. What do I mean by this? Well, I mean this the serpent. He came. Now, obviously, he came as a scary snake, which off the bat already seems suspicious, and you'd think that Eve would already not trust this guy, but Eve for some reason hears him out. But what I'm trying to get at is that even though the snake appearance seems scary, what seems pleasing and tempting to Eve is the actual like idea behind the fruit, the forbidden fruit that they're not supposed to eat. I mean, I mean, she saw it was good for food, pleasing to the eyes, and desirable for gaining wisdom. What does this mean? Well, it seemed like it's good for food, like it says. It looks good. It looks like it's tasty and all that stuff. And according to the serpent, it would make one wise, basically, making her like God or like gods who know what's good from evil and stuff. And I think that's the big part of why why Eve and ultimately Adam too, and I guess just ultimately humanity itself ends up sinning in the first place is because it's not because not because it's you know seems like you're scared into doing it. It's more because it seems like it's the best outcome. It seems like the most pleasing outcome when you sin. And I guess that's just the thing that another thing I should probably mention is that how the serpent lies. The serpent says, "You certainly will not die." And, well, obviously, when God said you will die by eating that fruit, he didn't mean it like they will die right away. I think it's supposed to be not interpreted, I think it's supposed to be understood as they will die eventually. Death will be brought into their possibilities of what could happen to them. And it's not like they'll possibly die. It's like they'll eventually die because of their sin and stuff. And here's the sad part about it is that this lays the reason on why everything after this happens. It shows us that why adultery happens, why evil like murders happen, why stealing happens, why blasphemy happens in the rest of the Bible, why all the problems happen in the Bible, why all this stuff happens. Because ultimately it comes down to this betrayal of God. Or not betrayal of God as in God betrayed them, but more like but not more like, but I meant you get what I'm trying to say. The betrayal of man against God. And so we're not talking I'm not just going to discuss like why bad things happened and stuff, because it's kind of already explained here why bad things happen. Sin is brought into the world by original sin. But I'm also gonna explain. Um, I guess I'm just also gonna explain that what happens because of sin. One of the first things is that you feel ashamed or you become self-aware, because we see Adam and Eve, they both realize what they've done, and they realize that, you know, they realize that they're out in the open and stuff. And so I guess it, how do I word it? They feel ashamed and they ultimately try to hide from God and stuff. And even though God knows what they've done, he still asks them because he gives them an opportunity for them to tell the truth. But although they can tell the truth now, the actions of what they've done already have already taken place, the consequences, because it shows God's not giving curses to Adam and Eve. He gives curse to the snake, obviously, but he doesn't give curses to Adam and Eve. They're more like consequences. They're more like results of what happens when you sin. What happens when you sin? Well, you turn against one another, so you start to become lonely. You feel ashamed, and you ultimately have consequences. There are consequences. Well, we see many of the consequences of what they get, but one consequence is just losing paradise. It's God promises us always that one day we'll be in paradise, but if we keep sinning, then we'll have to leave or not even enter because of our consequences. But God does not leave us here. God doesn't want us to stay like this. He promises from the moment that Adam and Eve sinned, and when he's telling the curse to the serpent, he promises that one day the serpent will be defeated by a woman, and or not woman, by the offspring of woman. And it shows the importance that it hints at us that Jesus one day will come and be here to stop sin. You know how it says he will strike at your head while you strike at his heel. Well, it gives us the idea that Jesus will save us. He will defeat the serpent and ultimately defeat evil. But it comes at a cost. The price for the sins that we've made and stuff. So that's what it means by while the serpent strikes at his heel, because it gives the idea that there will be a price to going against sin, or not to I guess ultimately fighting against sin, but it'll be worth it because evil will be defeated. And putting enmity between the serpent and the woman, it just shows the importance of woman, or I guess the new Eve. It hints how there's going to be Mary, ultimately the mother of God and stuff, and how she will also play a key role in salvation history. And the reason that God makes them leave basically paradise, the Garden of Eden, is not because, like, again, because of the consequences of their actions, so they could learn. But it's also not just because he doesn't want them to be happy anymore. It's because if they eat from the tree of life, then they're going to live forever in pain and suffering. So he doesn't want them to eat from the tree of life, not because he doesn't want them to live. He just doesn't want them to live in pain and suffering forever. And so they leave the Garden of Eden, and God places a cherubim with a flaming sword, an angel with a flaming sword to guard the Garden of Eden so they can never enter. And that is Genesis chapter 3. Now, as for Genesis chapter 4, we hear some wise words from God where we already start to see, God helping us, trying to mentor us despite sin, despite anger. What do I mean by this? Well, it's ultimately not known why God had regard for regard for Abel's offering and not Cain's. But I think it's because Cain just gave whatever, while Abel gave the best of his flock. He gave the best of what he's got as an offering. And that shows us we gotta give God the best that we got. We don't just give him whatever, Like, if it doesn't have to mean like you have to give him, it doesn't mean it literally, like you have to give him in some way, shape, or form some sheep as an offering. But like it could be seen as you can give God some time in your day, maybe the best time in your day. You can give God some kindness through others by giving kindness to others, some of your best kindness that you can give. Don't just give whatever, Secondly, what I was trying to get at, but then I got a little sidetracked, was the words God said. Why are you so resentful and crestfallen? If you do well, you can hold up your head. But if not, sin is a demon lurking at the door. His urges towards you, yet you can be his master. What is God trying to say with this? Well, he's trying to say that you can sit here and think life is not fair and be angry. Or you can hold up your head and you can be sin's master. You can control it. You can control your anger, be a master, and ultimately get the upper hand between you and the devil. You can be the master. You don't have to let sin, the demon, devil, however you want to call him, control you. You don't have to let him control you. You can control him. And what does this mean? Well, this just means that instead of being angry, instead of taking out your anger on innocent, you can just do the next right thing. You can be, he's not saying that you have to be happy. It's just that you don't have to be angry at anyone. You're allowed to feel upset. And if you want, tell God why you're upset. Prayer, like just explain why you're upset. But don't let that anger, don't act on that anger negatively to those who are innocent, such as Cain acting upon Abel. And we see, again, the consequences of our actions. We see that because Cain has done this evil deed toward Abel, he has to leave his land and he has to face his punishment. And it's ultimately because of sin, our punishment can be too great to bear. It can be tough. That's why, again, we need to ask God for help. Because even though we might have done wrong and we have to face our consequences, God won't leave us alone facing the consequences. God will help us through it. Not because he's like, let's make it easier even though you sin, but more because let's make it easier because you can be better. Or Not even let's make it easier. Just, you can be better than this. So we see that Cain ends up developing a family, and his family is on his family ends up, sinning, and we see Lamech having 2 wives, basically committing, I think adultery is right to use in this case. But we see that God gives another kid, another son to Adam and Eve named Seth. And we'll discuss later what this will end up leading to. But one last thing I want to leave you guys with before I go is going back to that one point I made. You don't have to let anger control you. You can be its master. You don't have to act upon your anger on those innocent, such as God, your family, your friends, maybe your loved one, or maybe just even an acquaintance just a stranger who you pass by along the street. You can still be nice. You're allowed to be upset. I want to emphasize that. You're allowed to be upset. Just don't be upset and act upon it negatively. Just don't act upon it negatively. So this is interesting, and remember, give God the best that you've got. Don't act upon your anger negatively, but you're allowed to be upset. Tell God about it. And even though the punishment might be too great to bear, God will still help us through it. Sorry, I'm just flipping the pages back and forth to get ideas on what to talk about. But anyways, I enjoyed having this talk with you guys. I hope you guys have a good day, and oh yeah, Merry Christmas, or if you guys are seeing this after Christmas, then Merry late Christmas. But just remember, live like Jesus. Bye.